Well, this is episode 2 of season 3. Thank you for joining me. Last episode felt like a fever dream. Actually, this week feels like a fever dream. I'm recording these closer together. So, the last episode was 2 days ago. And this week is very interesting, intense. Welcome to Aquarius season. Woo! So, in this episode, I want to talk about practical tools for shifting energy. So, the everyday alchemy that I enjoy so much. I'm also going to talk about the overall bigger picture alchemy, which is overlaid with like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, for instance, and relate it to the cycle of rebirth because I think it's really timely. And I think if you're listening to this now, it's something that you're interested in and it's something that you could probably very easily relate to. And if you're interested in astrology, this makes sense because you understand this whole shift from Pluto in Capricorn to Pluto in Aquarius. So, practical tools for shifting energy, everyday alchemy, what I'm practicing now, the things that help me, cycle of rebirth, alchemy, hero's journey, overall, remind you the stages of the alchemical process, and talk a little bit about this year and how this year really does feel like it fits this theme and this archetype. And we're going to talk a little bit about redemption, return, rebirth, which is at the core of alchemy and how I see that. So, in an effort to become more concise and structure these episodes so that at least they feel like they come back around and they make sense. Because again, like I said, the first episode felt a bit like a fever dream for me. My dreams have been intense. They've been feverish. I'm waking up hot and sweaty. So yeah, it's been a really interesting thing. And I feel like the first episode was more stream of consciousness, fever dream vibes than real world practical application. But I did explain that through the season, I wanted to give more practical experience and I wanted to keep sharing. And it's funny, I'm writing a new bio on Podia, an app where I'm hosting my courses. And it's interesting to reflect on just how I see this podcast. And it's been basically my diary of transformation and just where I share what's coming up for me. And I think I said last episode, I wanted it to be timely and I wanted to share as the experiences were coming. And this felt important because the farther you get out of an experience, I feel like sometimes the less nuance you remember, like you relate to it, but it feels like a hazy relation. It doesn't feel like I'm in the thick of it and I can tell you it feels like this. There's a certain quality that hindsight provides, which is wonderful, but it has the ability to almost create distance between the experience. Like when you get the hindsight and the epiphany and you're looking at it from outside of it, you've already come through it. So perhaps you might leave out experiences that would be very helpful and relevant to people who are in the thick of it. So I really did want to diary and document it as I was going through the thick of it, when it still didn't make sense, when it still felt like I'm still visiting the void sometimes, or I'm still, and that may or may not go away. There's still, I see value in going to the void, but there's a difference between finding yourself in the void, going to the void kicking and screaming, dropping into the void, dropping into flow, feeling the void and flow at the same time. Like there's different nuances to it. And for the first couple times that I was in the void and the dark night of the soul space, I thought, what the hell is going on? I I don't know if I'll survive this. It's like the moment of related to giving birth, and in that moment where the contraction starts so intense, where you question your survivability through the process of birth. So that's sort of, I went to that place a few times, and now I can see it as like, oh, okay, this is part of the process. It's part of the natural cycle of alchemy, and I don't stay there for as long. And I think sometimes that comes with knowing this cycle and being under understanding of the cycle. You know it ends, you know you come out of it. And that's really what helped me through the experience of postpartum depression, and then just like regular depression that seemed to last for seasons, like almost whole winters. And I'd obviously come up for air during the time, but there could be like a month where the whole month had the feeling of depression. And there's maybe a 4 or 5 peak days that felt like a sunny day, but the rest felt cloudy, kind of like Canadian winters. Gray sky every day, and every once in a while you get blessed with a sunny day. Although I shouldn't say that. We've had a lot of sunny days so far. It feels like in February we've had a lot of sunshine. So, but as I said, the dips feel less and less, and they feel functional, whereas before it was like the fear of being in the depths almost prolonged and extended it, because I wasn't able to drop the fear of being in the void and just allow the process to take over. It was like a thrashing in the void, and a why and what's going on, and ruminating and extending and fearing, and so it just felt a little less like I was working with the process, and now I see it as a vital part of the process. So okay, in terms of I'll talk about the practical tools afterwards, but I want to start with the cycle of rebirth and alchemy and how this is paralleled through the hero's journey. And I feel like this year is very much a year of adventure. So this year's a year 8 when you take all the numbers and add them up. For this year, it's a year of 8. Personally, I'm in a year of 9. So I went through my year of 8 last year. But this being a year of 8 is like very much back and forth between past and future, and then finding that solid spot in the middle. So think of an 8 on its side, right? And the year of 8 to me last year was very interesting because it very much felt pendulumy. It very much felt like I had to be okay with just sort of going back and forth. And it felt like, retrograding energy where you go back and forth over the same spot a few times. And so this year, if that's what it sort of feels like with this hero's journey idea to me. And when you think about like what's happening, if you're into astrology, Pluto has left Capricorn. It was at the 29th degree. I have Pluto at 29 degrees Libra in my chart. So this 29th degree is like final degree, mastery. We're leaving it. It went there briefly last year. It's spending time there now. I think it goes back into Capricorn for a bit at the second half of the year, and then it goes back into Aquarius and stays there for a 20-year cycle. So think like, ooh, 2008 till now, like how much you've progressed from 2008 till now, right? And then even 2018 till now, there's another sort of cycle within that 2018 till now that I've definitely felt a huge shift. So 2008, when I think about that, that was like I was in my first marriage and I was pregnant and giving birth with my first son. Like my world changed tremendously. To who I am now is like worlds different, leagues different. There is a core of me that is the consistent, like sort of essenced core, but the personality, the beliefs, the motivations, the desires, the aspirations, like all of those things have grown, expanded, shifted. Some have died off. And that's what's happening with these alchemical cycles. They're burning off what does not come within the next cycle or what does not come with the next cycle. And even if you think 2020 till now, like wherever you were, whoever you are, 2020 ushered in a profound shift in the way we see things and the way we feel and the way we look at life. Like pre 2020, think about how you felt in terms of like, I don't know, easygoing or what you thought life was. And then 2020 happens and it's like, okay, a big shuffle up. Whether you like it or not, you're forced to look at the world differently, look at families differently, look at groupings differently, for better or for worse, right? There's great things that came along. There were tough times we had to come through. And so it really is interesting that now we're in 2024. 4 is a stabilizing number, and we're sort of stabilizing in this place. And the last few years have felt like just up in the air, incredibly up in the air. And this year is really a year where it feels like we have our feet underneath us. Think about that 8 like a hoverboard. You have your feet on either sides and you're learning to balance. Like my kids have those yeah, what are they? Hoverboards with wheels, and you sort of lean forward and it makes it go forward. You lean back and it makes it go back. Not the Ninbot, not the Nimbot ones. They have other ones, but anyway, that's what it sort of feels like to me. And now we're like really starting this journey. And what's cool is that it's Aquarius season, and Aquarius is not the start of the zodiac. Aries is. But it's like we're taking everything we understood, bringing it in, reflecting on it on both an individual and collective level, because those are Aquarius themes, and figuring out how we move forward. Aquarius is like the birthing of the new. It's fresh journey. We're off to a fresh start, a new journey. So, in terms of the hero's journey, what this means is there's got to be a starting point. There's got to be a reckoning of like, okay, we got to have a start somewhere. Just in order to even reflect, we need to pick a starting point, right? So let's say, the beginning of the year is our starting point. Some people argue whether the January timeline of the starting of the year, the Gregorian calendar, or whether the zodiacal start of the year, starting with Aries, is the proper start. Whether spring, which naturally feels like a starting time, is a proper start. Either way, we can go with any of them, because you can look at winter as like a, yes, we're starting, but we're recuperating, we're building, we're reflecting, we're planning, we're returning to a set point, reflecting back and getting ready to go out again into the world. And so the first point would be the ordinary world in the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. The ordinary world, the starting point. This is the beginning of the journey, right? We're living life, we're doing things every day, an impulse comes upon us. We are called to adventure. We are the fool, starting out an adventure. This is also mirrored through the tarot cards. So this would be the hero's journey. This is the fool. This is the starting out point. So what have we learned from the last cycle? How are we ready to take that forward and begin a new cycle? So we take this call to adventure, and this is overlaid with the calcination phase. We're tested. We have to have a certain amount of courage and gumption to press us out onto this journey. What gets you fired up? What gets you up and off the couch? What gets you out of hibernation? Right? So there has to be a certain amount of feet to the fire to have you sniffing around and willing. It's like the smell of a neighbor's barbecue 4 doors down, the smell of the earth when spring is, when the ground starts to warm up, and now it's spring, right? So this is the calcination phase. We are being tested. What comes, what goes, what has to get burned off. Then we move into the refusal of the call. Perhaps we open the door and we decide, no, not ready yet. Thought I was ready, not ready. Left the house, turned around, came back in the house, forgot the stuff I need. Forgot my purse, forgot my phone, forgot something. Turned around, it's too cold. I need another layer. Turned around, I don't want to go today. I'm going to go tomorrow. We have this like jostling back and forth of like, do I want to do it? Do I not? And it has to sometimes build even more to the point where you get sick of the now. You get so frustrated with the now that you say, it has to happen. The fire has now gotten so hot that I have to go. I have to jump. So then this refusal of call is like the dissolution, because the ordinary world does not feel comfortable anymore. And the new adventure feels fearful. And so we know that the shoe doesn't fit anymore, and we don't know what the next part looks like. We don't know what the next shoe is. And we're forced to go regardless, maybe without shoes. So this is the dissolution, where what we thought was reality, what we thought was good enough, what we thought we wanted, who we thought we were, the way we thought things worked, what we thought was truth, what we thought we had to settle for, how we thought people would always be, misconceptions we willingly allowed ourselves to have, ways we willingly allowed ourselves to stay small, stuck, comfortable, contracted, numb, blind, all these ways that we willingly have kept ourselves from moving forward. And I will tell you, I have this call to adventure and refusal of the call. I have pendulum back and forth between. I've had my time in this, I've had my fair share in this, and like felt all of the full spectrum in and around that. Like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not moving? What do I need? What do I need? Give me a clear sign. Why am I so confused? Why does it feel so unstable? And in this phase, you can even like trick yourself into thinking you're not ready, and trick yourself into thinking that the confusion is easier to deal with than the unknown, than the adventure. Or you could trick yourself into thinking, well, if I was supposed to move, it'd be more clear, and willfully keep yourself in confusion, in the fog, in the mist, in the blindfolded position. You can say, no, I'm staying in the hangman. That's where I'll be. I've decided to hang myself up here and I won't go. And so that for me, I got very intimate with those stages and going back and forth, and then beating up on myself, and then not having the energy to like embark on the journey. And like the dissolution just kept taking me wave after wave after wave. Now, I'm a person that believes this is all in divine timing. It all happens for a reason. You actually experience these locks that are energetic. So if I'm willfully keeping myself back, there's something I obviously need to see in that state. And it won't unlock for me until I'm ready to move beyond. And there could be one half of me that is solidly ready to move beyond. And yet there could be another half of me that is very fearful. And until I figure out how to reconcile, unify, and harmonize those parts, to integrate those parts, to disintegrate the fear aspect, to burn it off, to get so sick of the rumination, stagnation, the tossing back and forth. It's like being in bed at night and not being able to fall asleep because whatever, and you're tossing from side to side to side to side. I had to get sick of it, and it had to build up a certain amount of compounding for me to push through or break through. So this dissolution happens. This is the refusal to the call. And then often there's something that comes in that gives us a little bit of inspiring and inspiration, that gives us a bit of push. This is the meeting the mentor. This is the separation phase, like separating the wheat from the chaff. This is finally pushing apart from the stuff that keeps you in fear, finally pushing aside some of the stuff, making enough of a separation, making enough of an awareness, making enough of a gap or a crack to let the light in, to where you can see what's the part of me that's holding me back and what's the part that's ushering me forward. For some, this is like, what's ego and what's higher self? How do I know which one is ego? How do I know which one is higher self? How do I know what are the parts that are programmed, and what are the parts that are confused, and what are the parts that are calling me forward, and how do I know what to trust? So in this point, you meet the mentor. For me, this could be anything from like divine guidance because you heard something at the perfect timing and it gave you inspiration, because you heard something and it made something else in your head make sense. It's, for me, it's the inner guidance. It's the inner teacher. It's the higher version of myself that when my awareness or focus is brought to something in my head, in my heart, in my body, in the external environment, and something I'm watching and something I'm witnessing in a relationship, something being mirrored to me, I'm not just taking in the experience of what's happening, but there's a higher level of awareness that is pointing to me things I need to see in a reflective way. So it's not just like, oh, this experience is happening and it feels uncomfortable, or oh, this experience is happening and it feels inspiring. It's not just that, it's more nuanced. And the more you develop that inner guidance, the more it starts to make sense of it. It feels like a more robust guidance, a more robust instructional experience, where it's not just this feels bad or good. It's that this feels this way. We're not going to label it bad or good, but I'm going to label the type of feeling it feels like. Is it contracted? Is it feeling expanded? Is it feeling like possibility? Is it feeling like fear? What is it feeling like? What is it related to? Is there a trigger? What's the trigger? Is this linked to something I believe about myself? Is this linked to a past memory? Is this memory so strong that it's stopping me from doing something in my present? Is this belief system too contracted for me and I've outgrown it. And it means that I'm not moving towards trust in myself and my own capabilities in the new journey. Is it something that's keeping me from walking towards potential? Is this something I need to block, an impediment on my path that I need to accept as a limitation? Is it something I need to accept and disintegrate? Is it something I need to transmute? Is it something I need to unlearn and relearn a new way? So, this is where you get this insight. So, the mentor could be hiring a therapist, it could be starting a new routine that you journal every morning, it could be working out to process latent emotions stored in your body, it could be committing to, I don't know, a book, a group, a workshop, a course. It could be anything that's an infusion of something with the intention to help move things along, get inspiration, use as a mirror, help you gain a higher vantage of awareness so that you can start to see what you take and what you toss. So you can start to see the aspects of you that are starting to become too tight, that are starting to become dysfunctional, that are ones you don't want to keep subscribing to. It's like gaining the awareness of what has finished, what has run its course, what you have to release, what you have to leave behind, what has to be rebirthed, what has to be known in a different way, what has to be surrendered, what parts of you can no longer come. If you have aspirations, if you've been triggered into inspiration and you're like, I really want this, there are some aspects of yourself that have to go. And sometimes that can be feel like grief. Sometimes it can be sad to get rid of some of those parts or to reevaluate whether those parts are useful. Sometimes it can be just downright confusing. Like, I want to open myself up to this thing, but there's a defensive part of my personality that's protecting me from hurt because of something that happened when I stood up and did a speech in front of the class, or I read aloud in front of the class, or I took this chance and it didn't work out, or I took a chance on love and ended up in a divorce. Like, whatever this is, you have to look at it and decide, is this going to be the thing that keeps me limited? And you can only do that by getting some perspective, by moving away from it enough to see it without feeling like you're within it. So we separate ourselves slightly and we sit with the mentor, or we sit with the higher self and the divine guidance. We sit with the intuition. This is where you start to become aware of the narrative in your head, of the belief systems, of the way you act. This is like the moment where you're drunk, perhaps, and you're looking at yourself intoxicated. And you're like, oh, this is what happens when I drink. I get like, okay, or I overshare, or I get into these moody places. And that just seems like an interesting example, right? But there are other examples where, oh, when I get like worried about something, it's funny, my kid and I have been talking about Murphy's Law and what that actually is. And I'm like, well, it's not necessarily like you're not doomed. It's not like it's just compounding. You can compound in a positive direction, you can compound in a negative direction, and momentum builds, and it builds like a snowball. So somehow you have to like pull back and get to neutral and see where you're at, right? So it's the moment that you create enough space and enough awareness that you can observe. And one of my mentors online talks about the gentle observer. And that's so key. And let me tell you, it took me a long time to make that observer gentle, because for the majority of my life, that observer was deeply critical and scathing and had a sharp tongue and could just like cut to the core. And so sometimes I would not want to listen to that observer because the tone and the voice of that observer was cruel. And so I had to reorganize, reparent, and gently bring that observer into gentleness, into grace, into forgiveness, into acceptance, so that I can notice what's wrong, but noticing what's wrong doesn't put me into a perfectionist clamp. So we got the meeting the mentor, the inner guidance, the separation so you can see. Then there's tests and allies and enemies. So once you see this, you'll start to be aware in all of your circumstances and experiences how this shows up for you. So you'll have those conversations that you're like, oh, I'd rather not. I'd rather not. I do not want to be triggered. I do not want to go into this. And those were the conversations that will come up to give you practice. In the beginning, if you're hard on yourself because you haven't figured it out the minute you came to the awareness, then it will be a trying time, like it was for me, my friend. But if you can gently observe and allow the experiences to come up and know that you might get it perfect the first time, and then you might not get it perfect the second time. You might not get it perfect the first time, and you might make incremental improvements the second time. You might spend a month literally just having a certain interaction happen repeatedly where you just get to see how every time you do the same loop, you do the same dance, you do the same program. You might feel like you've gone into an amnesiac state and wake up and be like, shit, I did it again. I did it again. As soon as I was upset, I went to the fridge and ate that thing. Or as soon as I was upset, I said the thing and I made excuses for me just saying the thing. I let myself ruminate. I decided to, vent, but in a way that meant that I just kept ruminating and making it worse. I did the behavior I didn't want to do. I did the behavior that I found out in the separation phase was preventing me from my growth. So you come to these awarenesses, you get tests, you also get allies, and you get enemies. You get people who will prove to be inspirational, that will show you a standard that you want to enjoy. There'll be people that will feel like role models. There'll be situations that model the way forward or the way to do it in higher octave. I've seen so many women online demonstrate how to deal with like hurtful, horrible comments, how to deal with, I made a mistake and here I am apologizing for it and I want to make it better. I've seen incredible women take the lead, be in leadership roles, hold strong boundaries and hold integrity and care and compassion and not separate themselves off in some sort of, I'm better than you, I'm holier than thou. And I've seen women call other women out, label certain things, cancel culture, get petty, calling people out while not realizing they're still doing the same thing they're calling people out for. So I've seen a whole gamut of it. I've seen, I've been tested. I've been in experiences where it's like, oh, I wanted to do the new behavior. Okay, here's the moment. Here's the opportunity. Am I going to do it? Am I going to do it? I've been in situations where I've started to do the old thing and had to pivot mid-sentence, like literally stop in the middle of the sentence, like regroup and pivot and start a whole new sentence with somebody in front of me. So this has been incredible. That's the conjunction phase. That's when you're like testing it out, trying on the new, figuring out what stays, figuring out how to move, how to pivot, how to shift energy. Then we go to the innermost cave, the fermentation. This is another reflection point where it's almost like a hermitage. And when I tell you, I deeply understand the hermit. I was a very extroverted person who really didn't like to spend too much time alone, but did. Like when I was little, I loved just like laying in the grass and thinking and daydreaming and going off into the etheric. And then there got to a point where I was a bit more social and I didn't want to be in that place by myself. I think that was probably the time where the negative narrative probably took a hold a little bit more. And then being in the narrative felt really heavy. So I knew that when I was interacting with people socially, I could have a little bit of fun and I could have a little bit of escape and I could sort of dip into their world a little bit more. And so I really held off the hermit or the reflection until later on, until I was like pulled into it. And that's like the first dark night of the soul thing, right? But this innermost cave, yeah, it's the fermentation process. It's where you just let everything mix in together and you let the decomposition happen. You are very aware now of what needs to die off. You're very aware of what is decomposing, what is rotting, what is not viable, right? This is where you understand this is not something I give my vital life force energy to, and I have to cut the energy off from it, and I have to allow it to transform and transmute and decompose. This is like going in the rich soil and allowing everything to break down. And this is a feminine experience. This is feminine energy. Feminine energy knows how to consume back into the darkness and dissolve. And so earlier, the calcination phase is more of the fire, right? And the fermentation can be likened to decomposing in your gut, like the bile that breaks down the food in the stomach, right? Yet another process of fiery breakdown. So metaphorically, it is sort of a burning off, but it's more of a breakdown. It's the fermentation to produce fertile soil for later. This is the manure that becomes food for the new. So this is the innermost cave. This is the alchemical stage of fermentation. Then there is the ordeal. There's the bigger test almost. This is the solidification of beliefs in a way that they are more intact or more a part of the new identity, or at least we're forming the new identity here. We're really committing to the values and the intentions that we became aware of in the mentorship, the separation, the conjunction, the tests and allies and enemies, and then the fermentation, the innermost cave. Like in those last three stages, we really became aware of what's authentic for me now, what feels good now, who am I now that I've allowed the other stuff to be seen that is not me, that I don't want to take with me, like these petty traits or these ways of dealing with conflict or these ways of playing small or people pleasing or these ways of slacking and not really putting my all in, these ways of living halfway, right? When we've identified all those aspects, we've had some time to see them at work and see them at play and just see to the extent that they are really affecting us in our lives, and they're the way they're affecting our relationships, the way they are affecting our ability to refresh and rebirth. They are preventing us, they are stagnating us, they are arresting our development. Once you've had a time or an awareness to be able to see what these parts are, to identify what has to go, what has to be cut off, what has to be disintegrated, what has to be dissolved, we then start to see what stays as well. And this is a simultaneous thing. Like on your call to adventure, you might really prize, like, well, I have the desire to like make more money. I have the desire to become an entrepreneur. I have the desire to seek more fulfillment in a relationship. I have a desire to elevate my standards around what I accept in friendships. I have a desire to try a new sport. I have a desire to have a feeling in my body that feels like strength and power. I have a desire to increase my energy. Like I want to have full days and not feel exhausted by my emotional back and forth. I want to feel virile and thriving. And this could come at like midlife. This could come at any time, but like this is where you decide I want more. And now's the time I got to go find more. So when you decide all this, you start to really look at, okay, well, but what are the values I stick with? What are the things that are important to me? What's integral to my journey here? And so, caveat, the hero's journey can happen over a lifetime, and it's simultaneously happening over cycles, over decades, over periods of time, over chapters, over the cycles of a relationship. So it's not just happening on the macro, it's also happening on the micro. And then when you understand that everything sort of follows a similar pattern or similar cycle, you can see it even happening throughout a day. You can take a simple, conflict that you're having with a partner or with a family member or with a friendship or in a work scenario and trace it through sort of the hero's journey steps. So it's an archetypal cycle that you can use to pinpoint, where am I at? What do I need to call in reinforcements for? What stage am I at here? What's important to me? What can I be letting go of? What are the cues in my environment? Because I think so often it's hard for us to recognize what's happening in our environment and how it's for us. We hear that like life is happening for you, not to you. And when we're in the throes of feeling like life is really fucking happening at me, it's really hard to see that. And when you hold that belief system, and you're still playing with it, you're still working with it, you're still figuring it out, sometimes it's like, yeah, okay, life's happening for me, but not here. Definitely not here in this shitty situation. It's definitely not happening for me. There's something happening here. Or in one area of your life, you could be like, yeah, I totally believe all that, but this one area here just keeps railroading me. What is this for? I don't even understand it. Or you could just not even recognize that there's something knocking at your door over and over and over again. So understanding this cycle is so key because you remember you're in a cycle and you remember that it is happening for you. And then you can start seeing the mirrored situations that are there for you to take information from. The tests and the allies and the enemies become your like ledges that you climb your mountain with. Like, oh, this is the fodder for the grist mill that like creates. This is the stuff that I get to turn up, turn over, and up level with. Like, this is my practice area. So this fermentation, tests and allies, me and the mentor, at this point, you're solidifying your values and your intentions. You know your goals, and you're aligning them to even higher principles over and over again. So in the beginning of the journey, you might have been like, oh, I just want to level up and I want to make more money. By the time this stage comes around, you're like, well, I want to make more money because why? We start looking at the whys. We make it more connected to our broader life's journey, our broader personality, who we're becoming even deeper. And we have this ordeal, this distillation, where we once again come to refinement. Okay, so now that I've practiced it and I thought that this was going to work and I thought I was taking this with me and I did the initial refinement and I purged some of the crap, and then I realized, oh, there's a deeper purge that has to happen. Oh, there's a little bit more that has to come off. Oh, I'm seeing something a little deeper than I did before. I've got new skills now. I see it from a whole new perspective. I'm aware of the observer. This is like another level where, you bring the awareness to the thoughts and the emotions, and you bring awareness to what's going on internally. And then you get to be aware of the observer. So it's almost like you become aware of your internal dialogue. That's the awareness. And you eventually grow that into the observer. So the observer's watching this. The observer's watching it and is having feelings about it. The observer's watching this and having opinions about it and thoughts about it. So it becomes multi-level layered. Then you can get awareness on the observer. So then you start to watch the observer having feelings about the personality interacting in daily life. And so being aware from this level is more gentle. It's okay, so at a systems level, I understand what I need to work with archetypally. Or at a systems level, I need to understand, I now know what belief systems have to shift so that I can think the thoughts and do the actions and show up to the interactions in the way that I want to. So this ordeal helps us distill even more and refine even more and purify even more after the fermentation process. So fermentation sometimes is like the oil slick on top. When you think about alchemy and the fermentation process, like the fermentation is where you would see like the separation of the oil and the separation of the substances that are now decomposing, and they become separated off so that you can skim it off the top. So you now skim the shit off the top. Like my husband and I make candles from some of his beeswax, and he goes through this process over and over and over again. And the bits of gunk or propolis that's in the wax gets brought to the surface so that he can scrape it off. Or even when he pours it into molds, the propolis and the bits will go to the bottom and he can slice that off. So we're distilling it even more. We're filtering it even more. And then the next phase is the reward, the coagulation. This is like when you unify with the thing you want, you've become proficient with the personality traits and aspects. When you're aligned with your values and the energy is unified and harmonized. And because it hits that note so perfectly, because you've been practicing and you've been refining and you've been braiding your intention and you've been working with the energy, that this note sings, and there's just such a beautiful experience created from it. There's a reward. There's a feeling of celebration. There's a feeling of, we hit it. We did it. It happened. It worked. It happened. So this is similar to even the transformation of a caterpillar to a butterfly. The coagulation is like when the caterpillar breaks down, it's kind of like mush inside that cocoon, but it has to recoagulate into some sort of form to create the butterfly. Like it has to congeal again. It has to come back to some sort of material form. So this reward is like, with all the energetic and belief work and all the internal alchemy you've done, because you did it right and you did the recipe right and you worked it and you refined it, you get to see the fruits of that. And it's not to say it'll be the perfect thing that you envisioned. It will be the fruits of your toils. It'll be the seeds you sowed are now bearing fruit. So the job that you did at toiling the earth, at tilling the earth and allowing the breakdown and allowing things to happen, the fermentation to occur, all of that work, now you get to see the physical manifestation of what was created from all of that. And then there's the resurrection. So this is the like exaltation, the showing up anew. This is the showing up and showing out. This is you return with the elixir in the hero's journey. So you have the new elixir. This is when the lead is the gold now. You have the gold. You figured it out. In everyday alchemy, this is like when you've transmuted, you've moved beyond the chaos, and you've transmuted what feels dense and what feels yucky and toxic and ugh and ick, and you've moved through all the stages of acceptance and grief, and you've felt the emotions, you've felt the feelings, and you've gone through neutrality and through reflection and introspection and come out and felt Bambi legs and practiced, and you're now at the point of like, I did it. Satisfaction. The elixir, I've transformed that density into bliss, into accomplishment, into creative, materialized experience. What is created in the energetic realm, if it's created with the strength and the intensity and the focus and the energy and the intention, I think I said that already, it has to materialize. It's like putting the sun on something and allowing it to grow and materialize. So that's the hero's journey. That's the alchemical process. And that happens on a bigger level, which is what this whole podcast has been about since it started. It's been about this process of alchemy that I've gone through in terms of a whole rebirth. So the version I was when I started this podcast, the version I was in 2018, the version I was in 2020, I have alchemized giant chunks of dense fear, depression, anger, angst, frustration, stagnation, personalities, traits of myself, things that I'd been carrying with me since childhood, since my teenage years, belief systems, ways of being, ways of achieving, ways of putting myself to work, ways of knowing what I was deserving of or not thinking I was deserving of. Like all of that has been a huge, 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 huge transformation. Like I can't tell you, like if I could show you my insides and I could show you the before and after of the internal energetic experience, I would, because you'd be able to see the transmutation of very dark, slow, heavy, dense places to very light, loving, hopeful, expansive, creative, iridescent, effervescent energies and ways of being. Like I didn't know there was an ability to be happy every day. And I thought it was just a facade. I wasn't even aware that that was a thing, and I certainly couldn't reach it. And it got to the point where I was like, I can't believe it. I've seen a few people. This was me meeting the mentors and me seeing people like they genuinely seem happy. And the old me would have criticized and called bullshit and been like, no, behind closed doors, I'm sure there's something going on. The catty version of me that couldn't think that it would be possible really didn't believe it. And then there was a part of me so deep down inside that was like, you did have that, and you had that in childhood, and you were that for periods of time, and you also have had that in moments, and when you had your children you had that, and you know what that's like. And then it was like, yeah, but it's not something you can have all the time. It's certainly not a state that you can reach. Then I kept being open to like, what if it was a bandwidth? What if you're just moving up octaves so that the lowest I felt then was like absolute despair and apathy, and what is the point of life, and why is this place so horrible, and why is it hard for so many people, and why are so many people dying, and is life supposed to be like this? Like, why are we even here? Why is there so much horrible experiences? Why is that the only thing I can see? Why is it the only thing I'm paying attention to? Why have I got an addiction to paying attention to all the negative all the time? Why am I so pessimistic? All of those things, right? And then thinking that I wasn't being realistic, or I wasn't living a real life if I didn't spend a decent amount of time focusing on those every day. And I had to truly alchemize those perspectives just to even believe the fact that it's okay to be happy in a world where people are still suffering. And it doesn't mean you don't have compassion for them. And it doesn't mean that you won't suffer, or it doesn't mean you won't experience pain, but you certainly won't be staying in the suffering out of an impulse to be attracted to negative, dark, pained spaces. Like I really had to make peace with the fact that I was choosing victimhood. I was choosing pain because I didn't believe that I could be happy every day. And I didn't believe I had the tools or the wherewithal to shift it. And then I started to understand energetic awareness, and I started to understand somatic work, and I started to see my mind. And then, then I started to see my mind as like against me for a bit. And then I started to realize that I could train my mind, and I started to realize I could work with my subconscious. And I started doing training on somatic breath work and getting certified in those things. I started doing training on BQH, beyond quantum healing, hypnosis, and started doing hypnosis with myself and other people, and started to really work with subconscious beliefs. And this is on top of going to school and doing my undergrad and taking sociology of mental illness, adolescent psychology, various psychology. My major was sociology communications, with a handful of psychology classes thrown in there, and then doing my master's in cultural analysis and social theory. Like I really dug into psychosocial experiences, and often let it fuel and fear and bring more fear. And I had a very anti-capitalist leaning that, I ended up writing my thesis on social entrepreneurship. But even then I was so skeptical of social entrepreneurship. And I live in a time now where there are social businesses all around. Like in my thesis, my criticism was basically, who's going to hold these people accountable to actually having a social business? And how do we know this is just not one big marketing campaign to say we are a social business? Well, that was happening. Absolutely. However, the determining factor for me, what I came to the conclusion with my thesis, was that it had to be the intent. Like the person behind it had to have the intent. And then it was like, well, how do you know if the person has good intent? Well, you'll know by the fruits of their labor. And also you'll know by their vision, mission, goals. You'll know by their business model. You'll know by the intention they weave into their business. And you'll know by the way they do business with people and what they create with their business. And it's possible. And so I went from a very skeptical person to a very optimistic person who experiences happiness every day, and who, when unhappiness or pain comes up, I don't actually feel like, oh God, good day or bad day. It's more like, what's coming up? Oh, interesting. Cool. This is something I can look at. And I alchemize it. I use alchemy every day to make the best out of my situations As again, this mentor, Amanda Francis, I absolutely love her. She talks about turning shit into gold. And that's the alchemy process. Taking the things that were stopping me from reaching my best and using them to understand myself better, using them to take care of myself and actually experience deep self-love, deep self-awareness, deep self-support, sovereignty, self-leadership, spiritual sovereignty, like developing this deep core of who I am that is resilient to anything. And the things I haven't experienced yet that could be throw me for an absolute curveball and really test that resilient to anything, I already believe and know I'm going to be okay. So it's been a real gift learning how to alchemize, how to shift my energy, how to see it all in the wave form so that nothing is permanent and nothing is nailed down. I can move and mutate my belief systems and choose better belief systems and choose more expanded belief systems. And again, at one point I would have been like, that's hypocritical. That was just me ensuring that I didn't get a chance to create new belief systems that allowed me to understand I was already worthy before I was born. I'm worthy now. I was never not worthy. And it's all a process that I can accept every single part of who I am, that I don't have to think that by accepting it or accepting these parts means that I'm going to energize them, give them vital life force. It means that I'm going to love them. I'm going to see how they arrived. I'm going to see these parts of me as like beliefs I've carried or aspects of my personality, but they're not me as a whole. So it's not like I'm taking a sword and cutting off parts of me in a brutish way that doesn't allow me to be me. It's a refinement process where I get to be more me, more of who I really am. Like when I'm feeling in my love flow, when I'm feeling resourced, when I'm feeling overflow, when I've given to myself first and I feel like, oof, like, isn't life just gorgeous? I am just grateful to be alive. And that doesn't feel like the bare minimum. It feels like the maximum potential. When I'm in that space, everything feels possible. And any challenge feels surmountable. And any experience feels creatable. And I see so much potential and possibility. And from that place, I really do get to see the potential of humanity. From that place, I get downloads about how we were meant to function as human beings, how intelligent our design is, how we were created as self-balancing, self-correcting, self-healing. Like from that place, you understand healing is coming no matter what. It's only a matter of consciousness and a matter of time and a matter of, not even a matter of time. It's a matter of knowing that that's the way we were built, knowing we were built to thrive. And that is like the benevolence of all. Knowing that we were built to keep living and thriving and evolving and growing, and that's the trajectory. Like there is an opportunity to be on a downward spiral. Absolutely. That's free will. We can have a downward spiral experience, but to know that the backdrop of our experience, the intention of our experience is upward, evolving, beautiful, loving, enhancing, getting better and better. I love the song Beautiful Boy, John Lennon. Every day in every way, it's getting better and better. And I truly believe that because I know it is and I see it. And because I know it is, I see it. I see it everywhere. It's mirrored back to me all the time. I feel so lucky for this perspective, and not lucky in the sense like, oh, lucky me, but lucky because I know that's the way it is. Like lucky because I'm deserving of it. We're all deserving of it because that's the way it's meant to be. And anything outside of that has been a falsity, a distraction, a poor experience that's traumatized us, that's been replaying, an overlay, a negative overlay, a negative colored glasses that have taken over and filtered our experience. So this process of alchemy isn't about like siloing something and chopping it off. Yes, it is about removing vital life force energy so we're not energizing and giving vital life force energy to things that are actually leading to our demise. It's about determining what is good for our growth, not what is objectively right or wrong or subjectively right or wrong, what is good for our growth, what is good for us, and cutting the resource to the thing that is not. So I'm not going to, like, if I've realized that gossip does not feel good, it's not doing anybody any good. It doesn't feel good for me. It doesn't feel good for the person. It's an undignified way to express for me. That's what it feels like for me. I want to have respect and reverence for people, regardless of what they do. They're human beings. Who am I to, cut them up, talk shit about them? I've already decided that. So if I were to energize the behavior of gossip, that would be detrimental to me. It doesn't go with my values. So I stop energizing the behaviors I don't want to see. And I take care of myself and I love on myself and I get myself into a neutral spot and I choose better thoughts and feelings and I slowly move up that emotional vibrational scale. Or I quickly move up it, whatever, because I can always reach right on up to surrender, gratitude, and grace. And that pulls me up so quick. So that's my complete thoughts, not complete, but for this episode anyway, thoughts on the hero's journey. Everyday alchemy. I didn't get to my practical solutions, and I'm honestly trying to make these things a half an hour. So I just want to talk a little bit quickly about redemption, return, and rebirth. So transformation at the core of alchemy is to uncover and bring forth the truth, the essence, the original creative impulse, the original blueprint, the majesty of what the human being has the potential to be. And then, of course, when we get here and we start walking around, we start moving around, like, think about your body's like in really good alignment and really good working order and heals pretty quickly when you're a kid. But by the time you're older, it seems to be a little bit trickier to keep bringing yourself back to center, unless you've supported yourself really well with exercise, healthy food, sleep. You've done all the things that take care of your body, right? But that alignment seems harder to get as we get older, but it's only because we've created more belief systems, more habits, and more patterns that aren't fulfilling that harmony and that balance. So I think what we do is we have these big rebirth cycles to peel back, refine, and reveal the original impulse, the original intent, the innate life force energy, the innate essence, the innate spark of creation that we are. And we allow what is dead, what is no longer functional, what is prohibitive, what is contractive, what is creating dis-ease and dysfunction to die away. We see it as not life-giving. So we let the dead decompose. And that's our impulse, right? We naturally will do this. And so reverently and functionally, we allow pieces of ourselves to die. We allow belief systems to die that we realize we thought were pieces of ourselves, but it was really just a whole mesh of belief systems. And it wasn't really our true identity. It really wasn't our person, like our actual personality. And we can let it go. And it's not that big of a deal. And we can do this in chapters. We can do this daily with different experiences. And we can experience everyday alchemy. So I guess next time I'll talk about everyday alchemy. But for me, I'll just say some of the things that I do. Breath work, huge. I break up the energy in my body with the breath work. I break up density. I tune into specific areas, energetic areas, chakras, organs, places that circulation feels limited. I tune in to myself. I set an intention. To connect with myself somatically. I feel into my body. I allow like everything feel like it goes, all my energy come back into my body. I literally feel my body feels perhaps congested in my head when I start. And I slowly pull. I imagine pulling the energy down into my heart and pulling it down into my toes so that my energy is evenly spread out throughout my body. And I can feel areas of my body that might be experiencing tightness. I observe. And I eventually, by the end of the breathwork session, I feel so good in my body and I'm so grateful and thankful. And my body feels like amazing. So I create this latch through breathwork, this connection. And I lose it throughout the day. Sometimes I do breath work again a second time. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get it back because I go for a walk. That's another one. And I do showers in the same way. I go in the shower and I just let the water bring me back to a state of flow. I also journal. Journaling has been so huge for me. If you don't journal, I encourage you to try it. I do it every morning and it is so key. It is so key to sort out my thoughts. It helps me see this multiplicity of who I am, like the observer and the observer of the observer, right? I close my eyes, I envision, and I allow everything to come back into center. I connect with my heart. So, breath work, journaling. Journaling usually allows me to see my mood first thing. Anything that's like ruffled me up throughout the night or ruffled me in dream time. It seems like I'm just going into these everyday practicality things because I'm already over an hour on this episode, but I find that journaling, it's like idea city. Like I've now gotten to the point where I'm journaling. I have to make bullet points at the beginning. Otherwise, I just start writing and then I forget things and there's like a rush. It's like being at a school and there's like 15 kids trying to get out the door at the same time. So I just take a mental point form note. Like I use keywords and just put half a page of just like bullet points. And then I start my journal. And then sometimes by the time I get to some of the points, I've already journaled and they don't even feel as relevant, but at least they're out. God forbid anybody catch me before I haven't done my journal. Like I have this dear friend and I've sent her a voice note before I've done my journal and then I go to journal afterwards and I'm like, oh shoot, I've just I've just unleashed all my points from my journal into this voice note and this poor woman has to listen to 6 minutes of voice note. She's gracious. It's wonderful. But the journaling has helped so much. It's helped me take something that feels frustrating and gain clarity on it. And also it helps me transmute it and shift it. Like through the process of writing something, I might put in like, I'm frustrated about this. Help me see this differently. What is going on here? And just by sitting myself down, the writing starts to clear whatever's going on and I start to see it more clearly. And as I journal, it's like things that would be too etheric or would be swimming around in circles in my head and I wouldn't be able to actually catch it and look at it come into clarity. I'm like, oh, like I know I could feel that. It felt like such a faint whisper, but by the time I write it out, it's like, oh, I see it. But I'm also not so attached to it because whatever I'm writing, I'm not looking now to reaffirm always. Like I'm not looking to reaffirm that frustration and keep pushing it forward and keep carrying it forward and ruminating. Yeah, and you know what? And you know what? Like that's not what I use it for. I definitely put in the frustration, but then I'll surrender it. And then I'll feel like this turnaround point and this pivot. And then sometimes I journal just because I'm feeling so much abundance of beautiful feelings and I'm feeling so much appreciation. Like sometimes I do the breath work. So I do them one right after the other. And sometimes I feel so good from the breath work. It's just my journal's like, I just feel so good in my body. My body feels so good. I feel so lucky to have this body. I feel so lucky to feel these sensations. I feel so lucky to know that I can change my energy. I feel so lucky to know that, my heart can feel a little bit tight. And then by the end of a breath work session, my heart can feel so open and light and free. Like there's just clear water or air going right through my body. It doesn't feel dense. I can feel light. I feel so grateful that, and it just all this gratitude starts pouring out. And as I write it, it almost feels like, pencil to paper, graphite to paper. It feels like it's gaining traction and it's building momentum. And this is why I love like not necessarily ruminating on the stuff that frustrates me because yes, there is a momentum building, but it's so crazy because when I journal, it's like I can take the momentum and turn it around and learn from it and spin and weave some gold from it. And suddenly that frustrating thing is a gift. Like suddenly I'm like, oh shoot, I know more about myself now. I see how I was doing that pattern. Oh, I'm now aware of it. Oh, I can accept it. Oh, I can transmute it. Oh, I can leave it behind. Oh, I'm glad I saw that because now I don't think of that the same way anymore. And it's changed. Like it can be the easiest way sometimes to transmute energy. Breath work, journaling can be the easiest way to find a turnaround. So either way, my journals almost always end with this like affirmative gratitude, this grace, this like often like I'm writing affirmations and I don't even mean to. They just start coming out because the turnaround, the pivot, right? And then this momentum picks up. And so they all end with like just being thankful to be alive. And they latch me up to that point again where I'm happy. Even if I woke up a little crusty, or I woke up a little grumpy, or I woke up a little bit like, what the was that dream about? That's crazy. Like, what does that mean? Oh my God. Generally after I've journaled and I've done my breath work, things feel like, okay, we've cleared it. Perfect. Like whatever was being presented to me in my dream was for a reason. And I see the reason now, and I see the connections to things. And basically I've spun the energy around like, a 1990s raver in my palm of my hands, and it's now a golden ball. Here you go. It's good. And so there's only a few times though where I'm journaling and I'm like, done 3 pages. I still don't know what the heck the thing means, and I'll just come back to it later. But usually that primes me so that during the day at some point an epiphany will land, and the experience will be known. And then it won't be like this dangling participle, or it won't be like this left at sea on a raft, what the heck is going on? Or like it's been instrumental in cutting down the time I spend like, I don't like this. Things feel yucky. I don't know why I'm here. Ugh, I don't like this. Why is this happening to me? What's going on? Like that could last before. But now the journal is just part of my morning practice, and I've refined the practice, and I've figured out how to spin my energy with it. Like I've been journaling for years. But in the last 2 years, it has become the most effective experience for me. And shout out to another coach that I watched online, Harriet. She did this program where she did this monthly thing where you could go into her container and she would like send voice notes. And she shared her journals one month, and like how vulnerable. And she's incredible. Ask Harriet. She shared her journals, and to watch her break down her process was so key for me, to watch her channel back and forth. Like, I'm feeling like this. Well, that's partly because of this. Or to see her have a dialogue back and forth with different aspects. So it was like higher self coming in and answering some questions was incredible, because it's showing that you can have a conversation with yourself. You can seek clarity with yourself. You can journal these experiences, and you get to sort of tap into your subconscious or tap into a higher version. So once you hold this archetype of what does the highest version feel like? Well, it always feels like it has patience, and it always feels like it can hold perspective and compassion. And it feels like it knows people are doing their best. And it feels like it knows that the world is a safe place to be, and that benevolence and love really are the answers. Okay, well, my higher self, that's how I feel about them. So sometimes when I'm in my human experience feeling frustrated about something, I'm easily able to pull that archetype up and have a dialogue with it that likely happens on the inside anyway, but to see it on paper is a really expanding practice. Okay, so what else do I do? As I said, shower. I love going in the shower. If I am like utterly frustrated, exhausted, my body is just like spinning, my head is spinning. If I can't get my head to stop spinning, like by meditation or breath work or journaling, I go in the water, and the water helps every time. The sauna also helps, but just touching water, putting my hands in water, slowly moving my hands through water, having my head under the shower as it drops down. If I can't do any of that, simply closing my eyes and taking some deep breaths, just bringing myself back helps. I would say the biggest thing is just like being open to knowing it can shift, and not telling yourself this is a permanent state, not telling yourself it won't work. Being open, just whatever you got to do, show me this differently. Whatever happens, I'm open to shifting. Whatever happens, I'm willing for this to be feeling differently. So, and I will say, walking, if you got something on your mind and your mind is going a million miles a minute and you've got so much going on, walking, huge. Body movement, huge. Like free movement, dance, ballet bar, I love, because it's been training me to feel more refined in my movements, and not like, white knuckle, like clench my teeth and like lift heavy weights kind of thing. Like I know there's a time and a place for that, but at this point in my life, more elegant movement has really connected me with my body and my desire and what I want, and not It's the more feminine movement as opposed to like just masculine, shove it through, you know, that sort of feeling. For me, that's what it feels like for me. And to be honest, exercise and movement has increased my energetic capacity. Like this emotional work it takes a lot. And I'd find that I'd be doing the emotional work, I'd be journaling, I'd be doing the breath work, I'd be learning at the same time, I'd be listening, I'd be studying, I'd be reading books, I'd be watching lectures, I'd be doing all this input. And then I felt like my body was getting like blocked, like it wasn't really moving. And also I'd feel exhausted. And because it was largely like screen work, it felt like my energy wasn't getting more. I wasn't feeling like I had more energy. I was feeling exhausted and restless at the same time. So I was like spinning internally and also too tired to do anything else. And like the thought of adding social on top of that, or certain conversations on top of that, or carrying things or doing things or going out and doing a day of groceries, or like they felt like so, oh, that would take so much energy. Oh my God, that would take so much energy. And exercising and taking that time to just be in my body and move my body and increase my energetic capacity, my energetic output. Like it's like, I don't know if you've breastfed, pumped, whatever. There was a point where I wanted to increase my milk production, and I would breastfeed and then pump for 10 minutes afterwards to increase my milk production. And that extra 10 minutes like brought up my capacity. And that's what exercise feels like for me. It's like it is that extra expectancy on my body that is increasing my energy. So I feel more energized. In the beginning, it's tricky. I felt more tired. But after like getting used to it and like getting my mind out of the way and just deciding this is what I was doing, because there has been times in my life where I've wanted to work out. I've resented working out. I've worked out hard. I've gotten too sore. I've stopped for 2 years. I've like, at one point I have done my yoga teacher training, 200 hours. And I was like doing that every day after I had kids. And that helped me with my postpartum, and it helped me with so much. And then I gave it up. I gave up my personal practice. Then I was into like weightlifting pretty hard, having a personal trainer, fantastic person, helped me out so much. Felt so strong from it, like helped my confidence, helped everything. Great for me. Stopped doing it for a while. So I've had this like ridiculous affair with working out and exercise. And it was all, means to an end, but also weaved in with like, I knew it was good for me. And now I'm at the point of like, I just want to enjoy it. I've understood that you can really enjoy anything in your life. Like you can bring joy to anything, Viktor Frankl. Like you can make the most of any situation. And then there's like mundane situations that you can not only make the most of them, but you can make them what you want them to be. You can enjoy them to their fullest. Like who said it has to be shitty? Who said it has to suck? Who said it has to feel like work? And even when it feels like work, who said it has to feel like what we've told ourselves work is supposed to feel like? So all of the things that I don't naturally, or I've somehow coded with not liking or feeling like, ugh, I've been made it my mission to find a way to enjoy those things, not to put myself through something torturous, not to like, you better like it and it's going to be shitty. Not like that at all. But like the stuff that I previously just wouldn't force, like I would either force myself or completely not force myself. It's like I've decided to lead myself through in a way that feels good. And now it's like how much joy can I crush? How much can I make this feel good? How much good can I feel? How much good can I get out of a day? It's now become a game. So there's no more pessimism telling me it's unrealistic to think I can feel good every day. It's just an expanding my bandwidth of feeling good every day. And that's where I'm at. And that's what alchemy has allowed me to do. And that's what my daily practice is. And my everyday alchemy has led me to do. And I have so much more to say on this, like so much more nuance to like, well, what about when this specific energy comes up and this feeling? And there's so much I understand and have to say about our energetic metabolism and how our body is like a furnace. And just like it metabolizes food, it metabolizes emotion and energy. And you can use it optimally to like become a magician, like become a master, become someone who like is the person who does the thing and has the big dream and carries it out and feels fantastic about it and lives the life that feels like, shit, I'm so glad to be here. This is so fantastic. Every day. Every day. Get a piece of that every day. And that's what I want to share. That's why I even do these podcasts. So thank you for listening. You can find me on Instagram at Femist, FEMMYST. That is the feminine mystic alchemist. That's my, what do you call it when you mash three things together? Chimera? No, that's like for like a griffin or something. Anyway, if anybody knows, reach out, tell me. But that's where I am, Femist on Instagram. I have a TikTok. I'm not as active there. I will get more active. Yeah. And that's why I show up here, because I love humanity and I know we're all capable of things, of these types of things. And we all get to have good lives to the degree that we are able to use what we have to make the best. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's an hour and 16 minutes. Thank you very much. If you stayed the whole way through, I love you. Thank you for being here. And I will catch you on the flip side.